Pig slips. Right now, teachers in Providence, Rhode Island, protesting plans to lay off educators just to cut costs. We hope to have the union guy leading that charge in a second. Now to the battle with public unions generally across the country, in Wisconsin and elsewhere. Republican Senator Jim DeMint from South Carolina says this is a defining moment. He really doesn't think collective bargaining in any stage is possible in a representative government. Senator DeMint joins us right now. Senator, these kind of protests are spreading. What do you make of them?
Well, Neil, taxpayers have a right to expect their elected officials to be fully responsible for the cost of their government, the fiscal condition of their government. And what we're finding across the country is when you have an unelected third-party union boss pressuring the states to continue to ratchet up salaries and benefits, that it pushes states to bankruptcy. So the facts are really on our side here, that the pressure from unelected union bosses is hurting the fiscal situation of the states. And the problem we have is this relationship between the Democrat Party and the unions, where the unions help elect the Democrats, and then effectively when they're negotiating salaries and benefits, the unions are sitting on both sides of the table. So really, my beef is not with the workers themselves. They have every right to unionize in the private sector. My beef is with the union bosses, the expectations that they have some right to decide what government employees should be paid and how our government should be run. That's the job of elected officials.
Here's where some Democrats disagree with you, Senator. Obviously, some of these union guys. If private workers can unionize, why can't and shouldn't public workers?
Well, it's a totally different situation. In the private market, companies have to compete. Unions, at least their expectation is to be more reasonable, because if they raise the cost of doing business too much, they lose business, they go out of business. In government, it's very different. What we've seen is the unions pressure up salaries and benefits. The taxpayers are forced to pay it. The unions are effectively a monopoly power that, particularly at the local and state level, is very difficult to resist, and taxpayers are waking up and finding the people who's supposed to be serving them in government are making more money than they are and getting better benefits, and don't even want to pay a fraction of their health care or pension costs. It makes no sense at a time when our country and our states are bankrupt that you have these union bosses pressuring and even intimidating state governments and federal governments to pay these exorbitant wages and benefits.
I'm just wondering, Senator, where all this goes, because I never know what poll to believe. I've seen one in the New York Times and others saying that public, average folks support Republicans getting tough on spending, but get kind of antsy when it looks that you're destroying unions or you're trying to stop folks from collectively bargaining. And again, it really depends on the poll and clearly the way it's worded. But you get the gist of this, that this could boomerang on Republicans. What do you say?
Well, Neil, I don't think so if we get the message out. If you ask any voter, do you want your elected representative to decide what it costs to run government, or do you want government union bosses to decide? It's not going to be close. I think if people understand we're talking about government unions, collective bargaining to ratchet up the cost of government, the whole idea of a public union sounds more benign. Once people understand we're talking about government servants pushing up salaries and benefits beyond what the taxpayers make, I think the Americans are going to side with us. And the real bottom line is here, the states are going to bankrupt if they continue to operate under this collective bargaining arrangement that we have now.
Senator, while I'm talking to you, I just want to bring you up to date on a FOX News alert coming into us. As expected, President Obama has gone ahead and signed that temporary extension to keep the government going for another 2 weeks. I believe it included $4 billion in cuts that largely he had set forward himself. How did you feel about that extension of the Senate? I'm sorry, sir, I don't know how you voted. Rand Paul was here a little early. He had voted against it because he just thinks it's a piddling drag out. But what do you say?
Well, it is a failure of leadership. We still don't have anything from the president about what his budget is. I mean, he's been in office 2 years. We don't have a budget for this year, and we're 6 months into it. And Senator Reid is still not offering anything. So the Republicans
So what
are
do you
being
think
forced...
of that? That's an interesting point, because I've heard this from Democrats. They're railing against you Republicans and everything else. You know, you're trying to stop the budget process. They never signed on to a budget. They never offered a
No,
budget. So
they
here we
never offered
stand.
a
So what happens? We're going to limp along 2 weeks at a time doing this? We're going to shut
Well, this
down?
is a small victory, Neil. I've been in Congress 12 years. This is the first time we've ever passed anything that cut anything. So it's a small step in the right
So
direction.
you were for this today?
I voted for it today.
So when Rand
even though,
Paul says that, look, this is really just chump change and not a
he's
serious
right.
effort, what do you say?
It's not. If it wasn't just 2 weeks, I wouldn't have voted for it. And frankly, this is the last time I'm going to give them a 2-week extension.
Oh,
We need
really?
to
So
finish-
this were to come up 2 weeks from now to prevent a shutdown, you would not vote for it?
No, we need to pass the budget for this year to make sure the government's funded, and then we need to get on to serious reforms of the government that cut the cost of the things we do here. And Neil, I think the good news that we want to get out to Americans is there's a lot of ways we can cut the cost of government without cutting benefits to the American people. It no longer is it a matter of what the government can do, but what it can let go of. And once we start letting go of functions at the federal level that the states and individuals can do better, I think you can see us trim the cost of government, give people better choices. So I'm looking forward to this debate as we go from here to 2012. The Democrats are claiming that we've got all these essential services at a time the General Accounting Office has said we got over $100 billion in waste every year in this government that we're not even attempting to cut. So we're going to have an interesting debate, and I think if we can get the truth out to the American people, they'll side with us in 2012.
We shall see. Senator, thank you very much. Good seeing you again.
Thanks, Neil.
Senator DeMint. Well, union battles are indeed heating up, and now the GOP is ramping up its 2012 push, blaming the whole union mess on the very